This is Barry Martin Snyder, and our website is luminousself.com. I feel called to share on a broader level to many a gift of grace that's been given really since the beginning of our work, but coming to fruition in the last couple of years. We call it the Triune blessing grace of the Atonement or Atonement. This entire work began when Karen and I were given to work with the Office of the Christ. Many years ago in Taos, as some of you know, Christ came to me and asked me to serve in the Office of the Christ. And people began to come to that little adobe out on a mesa. And the Christ energy consciousness and presence would descend when they would come. And people would go through a whole process of healing, resurrection, awakening. That's been the core of this work for the many decades since then. A number of years ago, another gift of grace came, which we call ego self-forgetting. It was clear that this grace could descend from the Christed levels, but the limitation was the inherent ego resistance that people experienced to receiving it. Over years, this was always the limit to what was possible. But the ego self-forgetting was an emanation of grace that basically caused the ego mind to forget itself. Sort of an aikido. Because what the ego mind is self-forgetting with a capital S. So when ego self-forgetting came through, it would declutch the ego mind from its tendency to block, to resist, allowing the energy and consciousness of the higher levels of self to descend. And the Christed presence and the Christed consciousness, which are the result, are nothing more than the soul being awakened to its true nature as a triune presence, existing as the aspect that's embodied, the higher self, or oversoul self, which is never embodied, and the I am, or source presence, that is always completely connected to the Godhead. When these three levels of being are awakened and incarnated, we have the Christ realization. The three soul centers fully awakened, fully activated. So the ego self-forgetting set aside, ego resistance, of consciousness going to the core of the soul, and making this journey up through all the levels of being and bringing it the whole way down. And this was a very powerful addition that we would call in and would descend during sessions. Another aspect, our gift of grace that was given, was the ray of redemption. And the ray of redemption came again from the universal Christ level. And when it descended down the central channel, it would go right to the very core essence of what was wanting to be redeemed and resurrected from the personal level of being. Whatever there would be, a wound, entrenched belief systems, judgments against self and others, patterns of identity, delusions, fantasies, projections, and ultimately separation itself. It would know specifically what needed to be redeemed, and it would go right to the seed essence. Instead of necessarily peeling off many, many layers over time, it would go to the core, the root, the seed essence. A few years ago, these three came together as the Triune blessing grace of the Atonement or Atonement. And when it is called in and descends, there is a flow of grace down the central channel from source through the oversoul realms into the 8th chakra, soul star above the head. And then it begins to descend into the crown chakra. And as it does, this magic of grace happens where it brings to the surface everything unlike the Christ consciousness and Christ realization, and begins to redeem it directly through grace. Everything comes to the surface in a perfectly orchestrated way, governed by the infinite loving intelligence of the oversoul and source level of being of the individual involved. It looks down and sees where all the knots of the false self are and goes right to the work of untying them. And it does so with an ease and grace that we've never experienced. And it does so in a compressed and accelerated way because the grace obviates time or sequential experience. It doesn't mean we don't go through the process of redeeming it all. But let's say we're at step C in the journey. And when the Triune Blessing Grace comes in, we can find ourselves at G. Having gone through D, E, and F, through the blessing grace of the Christed levels of being. Stuff just is dissolved and transmuted. Things come to the surface that need conscious attention, that we need to become aware of. but they're easily seen, experienced, and dissolved into that blessing grace. It happens very rapidly, very easily, like nothing we had ever experienced. And other emanations of grace also descend. There are many that are discussed on the website. But through this process, there's an opening to receive other grace from the Christed realms, like the ultimate truth light, which awakens the ultimate truth mind. Emanations of grace from other ascended beings who pour in just the right thing that we need in that moment. It's unlimited what can happen, and does. Sometimes a vast ascended feminine presence will come through if that's what's needed. Divine qualities and capacities descend, such as the blue ray of divine will and power, if that's what's needed. It takes one deeper into the core of the soul, where all the divine qualities and characteristics, capacities of our divine nature lie in potential and essence, and allow these aspects of essence to unfold, such as joy, peace, compassion. And lately, it's activating the soul purpose and destiny of many that are coming, by opening up to the vast levels of their being, where unique gifts of grace that they're here to bring forth, to send and become available to be owned and gifted to others. So we feel called to now share the availability of the Triune blessing grace of the Atonement and One-ment with many. Just a little piece on the whole concept of atonement. The Christ presence in consciousness is the completed holographic essence of the end of the journey. It's where we become where illumination or enlightenment, full self or God realization, and the full, complete, healed, whole human merge as a one unified realization. That's what's available through the universal Christ. It goes directly there. It's beyond all karma. So the need to experience everything that we've misqualified through our life experiences is erased. In other words, if we've harmed somebody in a certain way, we don't have to have it happen back to us. We simply need to face that aspect of ourselves, to repent, which means to change direction. In other words, to choose to own the results of our actions, which is difficult sometimes, painful, which causes us to seek redemption, to want to be different, function in a different way, and we turn it over to grace. And that's when the magic can happen, that whole samskara, or karmic tendency, can be dissolved. This all now can happen very rapidly and quickly at the end of the age. So if you feel called to experience this, contact us. Our website link is below. And we will be offering this also at times in group events on Zoom. And we invite you to come and share this blessing grace. We have not ever in these 37 years seen anything more profound. We are accelerating into the vortex and singularity at the end of time. It is time for our true, eternal, divine self to be fully realized and lived and expressed. And this will determine the fate of this planet's transit through the great changes. The more we realize and embody it, the more gentle they will be, and the faster we will come to the new earth heaven, where Christ consciousness reigns. Thank you for listening and considering this. We are here. If this resonates in any way, please connect. Much love. Many blessings.